it's Kevin again with an early review for the latest film from the DCEU, of course being Shazam. And what Shazam is essentially about is we center on the character of Billy Batson, and this is a kid who, he is very rebellious, and he's gone through a lot of foster care and things like that. He's kind of trying to track down his mother, and he's recently being put into a new foster home, and one day when he's on the subway, he ends up into this otherworldly sort of dimension, and he ends up being confronted by this wizard who basically explains to him that he has been chosen to be given all of these powers from the wizard, and it's transferred over to him using the word Shazam, and anytime that Billy says the word Shazam, he now turns into this adult superhero, and the rest of the film is him trying to figure out how to balance all of that, but also get a little bit more into his powers, and also hopefully try to balance his normal life as well, and that's really all I'm going to say. So, Shazam. This is a film that I was cautiously optimistic about. There was a part of me that was a little bit worried because it is a DCU film, and I go into every single one of those films with, you know, that same sort of cautious optimism. But, that being said, I've never been this optimistic for a DC film in quite some time. This film looked so positive. It looked like it was going to be a lot of fun. It looked like they were going to a completely different direction. I like that they were focusing on a superhero that is not nearly as well known as, say, someone like Aquaman or Wonder Woman. And I was really hoping this could be something really great. And I'm very happy to report that Shazam, honestly, was everything I wanted it to be. This is a highly entertaining superhero film that is much more than just your typical origin story. But we'll get more into that. We got to start off, though, with the cast. And that was one of the things I was most looking forward to when it came to this film. This is a cast that I think everyone here, they're just so talented, they're so dedicated to their roles, and I really do think everyone does such a great job. But we have to talk about Zachary Levi, because this is one of those films where if Zachary Levi is not as good as he is, I don't think this film works nearly as well. And gratefully, Levi is fantastic in this role. He's so charismatic, he's so likable, he's so funny, and you can just tell he's having the time of his life. And in the same way that the Deadpool character basically felt like it was written for Ryan Reynolds and that those two characters are one and the same, this is essentially the DC version of that. Just not nearly as dirty and crude and things like that. But again, in the same way that Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool, Zachary Levi is Shazam in every way possible. And I loved everything about him as this character. He's so fun to watch. You really do believe that he is this 14-year-old kid and things like that. And I think he definitely did do a very good job with that. But again, he also can be a badass. And he definitely does have those moments where you see him as a superhero, and moving forward, if we see more of this character, I am definitely going to be happy about that, because I liked where they went with this character. I liked where Levi ended up going, and I think after this film, Levi is going to become a much bigger actor than he always has. You know, I've always enjoyed Zachary Levi's presence, but I've never really felt like he's been utilized all that well, and I'm glad to see that finally we have a film that I think is going to propel him forward as an actor, and I really hope does, because he is really great here for sure. But that's not discrediting the other actor that plays Billy, and of course I mean in terms of the actor that plays Billy when he's 14 years old. Asher Angel was also great here. I was surprised by how good he was in this movie, honestly, because like they show him in the trailer, but he had a lot more to do here than I was expecting, and I really loved him in this film. Billy is someone who you can understand the sort of dilemma that he's going through, but at the same time, this kid can be kind of a asshole at times. But again, he's not an asshole in a sense where he's unlikable. I think he had the perfect amount of, I think he delivered it in the best way, where he comes across as, you know, someone who goes through a pretty big arc in this movie. He does actually change quite a lot here, and I definitely did like where he ended up going. You can understand where he's coming from. Billy is someone who, you know, he's trying to be a normal kid, but he also is trying to track down his mother and things like that, and he's trying to do the best he can just to balance everything, and I think overall he definitely did a very good job here. And same goes for Jack Dylan Grazer, who honestly, if it wasn't for Zachary Levi, I think he would have been the comedic standout in this movie, because he had almost just as great stuff to do as Levi did. I really did love Grazer in this movie. He's so fun here. You know, he plays Billy's sort of foster brother. The bond that these two have is so great, not just when it's Zachary Levi and Jack Dylan Grazer, but when it's just the two kids. I mean, those two work so well together. They have a very easy chemistry. You really do like these two as brothers. You really do love their bond in the film. You want them to succeed, and I really did love where they end up going with them. I thought they were definitely a lot of fun here. Grazer is really showing his chops as an actor, though, between something like this and it, and I really loved what he ended up doing here as well. I was very impressed by his work here. The rest of the cast, though, also does a very good job. The person that surprised me most, though, is Mark Strachan in this movie as Thaddeus. I was not expecting that much from him because, again, this is a DCEU villain, and usually that is a recipe for disaster. In fact, I can't recall of one film I've seen from the DCEU that actually had a good villain, and I'm happy to report that this one actually does. Thaddeus is actually a really good villain, and that is thanks to Mark Strachan. He really did help keep this character grounded in reality. You can understand Thaddeus's motivation. I like where Strachan went as the character. He never got too cheesy. He never really seemed like he was overdoing it, and overall, I was very impressed by him, and I was surprised by how good he actually was in this movie, but he really is fantastic here. And as far as all of the other characters in Billy's family, they were all also very good, especially when it comes to Faithe Herman, I think is how you pronounce her name, the little girl. I thought she was great. I loved her in the movie. She was so sassy. She was so fun to watch, and I loved her here. I also really like Grace Fulton. I thought she definitely did a really good job. Cooper Andrews from The Walking Dead shows up, and he's really good. Really, this entire cast, I felt like everyone really was on their A game, and I really can't say that there was a weak link here. I really was impressed by everyone in this film. But now I really want to get to the directing and the writing, because here's the thing. As much as I said the film doesn't really work without Zachary Levi, Asher Angel, Jack Dylan Grazer, etc. being as on their A game as much as they were, same goes to the directing, and I think that's been a big problem with the DCU overall. I don't think the directors have necessarily been the problem. It's that they have not really given the directors that room to add their own style to the movies. There's always been this like studio interference, and rarely we'll see someone like a Patty Jenkins, for example, who really does stick out and gives us something really different and something to really admire. And gratefully, it does not seem like that was the case for David F. Sandberg, who I think perfectly delivered what he was trying to do with this movie. This is a film that, yes, it is very silly. From the trailers, you definitely do get that vibe, and that's one of the things I really do like about this movie, is that it is a lot more lighthearted. It is a lot more fun. It is poking fun at a lot of superhero sort of cliches, and it does a very good job with that, and that's something that I definitely really did enjoy. There's a lot of funny moments in this movie, some that honestly had me rolling on the floor, dying, honestly. I was so surprised by how funny some of this movie really was. There is a great joke, for example, this running joke involving Jack Dylan Grazer and Zachary Levi. They're trying to find a catchphrase for Shazam, and I won't spoil anything, but that whole gag, I thought just all of those jokes hit like bullseyes, and I love the way that was going. There's this montage as well that is just absolutely hysterical. So many hilarious moments throughout this movie, and again, it's very satirical as well. There's a lot of moments where they make fun of things like, say, the sidekick who isn't as good, or how evil Mark Strachan is as a villain and things like that. They do a very good job poking fun at that stuff, but what really surprised me is that the film also is very grounded. It tells a very good story, and those dramatic moments actually work really well, especially when it comes to the moments involving this foster family that Billy is involved in. That's where the film actually really does tug at your heartstrings, and there's one moment especially involving Billy and his search for his mother, and it honestly really did get to me, and I was surprised by how invested I was in the story. But credit really does go to David F. Sandberg for crafting a really good story here. I think his directing was definitely really good. it never really seemed like he was confused with what he wanted to do. And again, considering what we've seen in other DCU films, that is a lot to that is a lot to praise for sure. And I think it is a huge improvement over what we've been seeing recently. And I was definitely very happy with his directing here. In terms of the writing as well, like I said, that's something else I really did love about this movie because look, one can look at this movie and say, oh, there's a lot of things we've seen before. And yes, there is. I mean, when Billy turns into Shazam, he starts to take a lot of advantage of it. He starts to skip classes. He starts to treat pretty much everyone in his life like shit. He wants to become this superhero, and that's kind of all he wants to do. And sure, we've seen an arc like that before where, you know, this character turns into a complete asshole because they're letting their powers get the best of them and they aren't, you know, remembering the things that are important in their life. But then you incorporate the foster family into it, and I think that's really what makes this film stand out. The foster care stuff is actually handled really well in this movie. Shockingly well, honestly. I was surprised by how good the foster care stuff really was. I mean, when Billy first enters this home, you feel like, you know, you can tell that he's a bit out of his element. This family seems to be getting along quite well, and you get the sense that Billy hasn't really had this good of a family before, and he's not really used to it. And I really did love seeing that story. The chemistry between him and the foster family, like I said, is really good, but it also is due to the writing because they really do take a lot of time to get you invested in that family, especially when it comes between him and Jack Dylan Grazer. I mean, the relationship that those two end up forming, I think, is really sweet, and there's a lot there. It feels a lot more authentic than I was really expecting. And again, I can't believe I'm saying that from a film that is this ridiculous, but there are actually a lot of really heartwarming moments in this movie, and a lot of that is due, like I said, to the foster care stuff. But also when it comes to Billy's search for his mother, this is something else that we tap into quite well, and I think it was a really good arc for Billy. You can understand why he is so, you know, why he is so relentless on finding his mother. Even when he's in the foster care home, he doesn't consider them his true family. His mother is his true family, and I really loved where that plot line ended up going. I was not expecting to go in the direction that it did, and I thought they handled it very well. I loved where that ended up going overall. Even the villain, like I said, Mark Strachan as a character is actually really good here. They give him a really clear motivation. You can understand where he's coming from, and I do think they did a very good job with him overall. He's in the movie just enough for you to fear him, but they don't overcomplicate things with his character, and that's one of the other things I really love about this film is that it really does stand out on its own. It does connect to the DCU in some way, but in a lot of ways it shows that they really are trying to get away from Batman and Superman and things like that, and I'm happy, honestly. This is what DC should have done from the start. They should have concentrated on these origin stories. They should have concentrated on getting us to care about these characters, and I'm glad it seems like they're finally starting to understand that. They're starting to understand what they need to do with these films. How are they going to make these films succeed? Moving forward, this is definitely, I think, the way to do it, and that's something else that I really did love here. There is one joke, though, with Superman towards the end that I thought was just genius, and I loved where they end up going with it. But like I said, the writing here, it's really well done. It's a fairly simple story, and I think that's really what ends up enhancing it overall. The cinematography in this film also is really well done. The look of Shazam and things like that when he turns into the adult Shazam, it looks really good. Him flying through the city, him getting to access his powers. I mean, all that stuff is very well tapped into. Even the look of the world that he goes into, like all the ice and things like that, and the look of Djimon and Hounsou, that stuff looks really good, and I think they did a really good job with that. However, I will say not all of the CGI looks good. When it comes to the 7 deadly sins in the movie, they don't look the best. I will definitely say that I don't think they look the best. They don't look bad necessarily. Like, this isn't Steppenwolf level bad, or say Enchantress level bad, or even the third act of Wonder Woman bad. But I didn't think it was the best. It wasn't really till the third act when I started to notice it more. At first, I didn't think they looked that bad, but honestly, upon thinking about it, they definitely could have looked better for sure. We've seen worse, but I do think they could have looked a little bit better. But everything else does look really great. I thought the cinematography was very good here for the most part. There's actually not too many action scenes in this movie, which really did surprise me. It's kind of like Bumblebee in that way, where it is very much of a family drama, and I really did enjoy that overall. I think it was actually a very wise choice to refrain from the action. There is a big climax towards the end of this movie, but there isn't really a lot of action, and I actually really did love the choice to do that. And the editing, this film is over 2 hours, and it flew by for me. Honestly, some DCU films really do drag. Aquaman, for example, as much as I did enjoy Aquaman, there are points in that film that did drag for me. This never dragged once. There really wasn't a point in this film that I was bored, or I thought, oh, this is too long, this needs to be chopped down a little bit. I think for the most part, this film was extremely well paced. I really was getting into it a lot, and again, the story is so investing in things like that, and it really is very refreshing that you kind of just want more from it. And I think they definitely did a very good job with that overall, and I really did enjoy the editing here. So with it being as entertaining and as, fun as it really is, there really aren't too many flaws with this movie. There are a couple things that I do think hold it back. I already touched upon the seven deadly sins, but aside from the look of them in the movie, I actually thought some of their whole story with Thaddeus was a little underdeveloped. There's this really interesting element that they introduce in the third act of the movie, and I wish they could have tapped into it a little bit more. I liked what they were getting at, but it just didn't feel as, again, as prominent in the film as it really could have. And maybe this is due to the fact that they really don't show Mark Strong that much until the third act of the movie. And I'm not saying like he needed to be in the movie more. Like I feel like if he was in the movie more, I probably would have gotten sick of him. I probably would not have liked him as much in the movie. It probably did benefit the film that they did not use him as much. But I do feel that they could have tapped into this one aspect of his character just a little bit more overall. I will also say the climax, as much as I did enjoy it, it definitely does go on a bit too long. There are certain points in the movie where it feels like it's coming to an end and then it kind of keeps going. I'm not saying it's boring or anything, but it did become a little over long, and I do think they could have chopped that down just a bit. And there are a few characters that I do think were a little underdeveloped. These bullies, especially, where they end up going with them, it is definitely predictable. They don't really do a lot with them overall. Also, without spoiling anything, there is a mid-credit scene in the film. I did not see the post-credit scene because I didn't know if there was going to be one. So if there was, I didn't see it. But without spoiling it, where they end up going in the mid-credit scene, I'm not really down for. I don't really love the direction that they're taking. Maybe they'll get me more on board with it, but I wasn't really the biggest fan of it overall. But for the most part, this film is highly entertaining. This film basically gave me everything that I wanted, and considering how likable Zachary Levi, Jack Dylan Grazer, and all of those characters are, just how fun of a movie it is, how it is willing to poke fun at a lot of superhero tropes and things like that, this film made me feel real good coming out of it. This is real refreshing when it comes to DCU. Like I said, moving forward, if this is the kind of film we're going to get, I really can't complain. I like where they are headed. I like the direction that they are taking. Honestly want to see more movies like this where they focus on the more secondary superheroes that haven't really been given credence to, and we actually give a reason to care about them. Iron Man, for example, in the MCU, no one really knew who he was. Like, people knew who he was before his movie, but he did not have the platform that he does today. And I feel like a character like Shazam could really end up benefiting the DCU overall. And I do hope we see more films like this overall. So at the end of the day, like I said, this is such an entertaining film. I think if you go into this film knowing what it's going to be, I don't think you're going to be disappointed. If you go in wanting a really fun, refreshing superhero film, I think this film will very much entertain you. It is just as fun as you're expecting, but it does have a lot more heart as well. That family dynamic is really great in this film. The foster care stuff, like I said, I thought that was very well handled. The character of Billy Batson does go through a very strong arc in this film that I wasn't really expecting. The villain is even really good in this film. And again, just aside from those few things overall, I really can't be more impressed with this film. I really did love Shazam, and I'm definitely going to give it an A-. So overall, guys, in my review of Shazam, let me know what you guys saw this movie overall, left your thoughts on it. Please see this movie when it comes out. I really do want this to be the biggest film for the DCU. I don't know if it's going to surpass Wonder Woman or Aquaman, but I definitely could see this doing really well for them. I think this is definitely the type of film that DC needs right now, and again, I want it to do really well because I do want to see more of this character. I want to see more films with this kind of tone. I want to see it have this kind of style, and I think that's something that the DC has really been in need of, and I don't think there's ever been a time where they are more in need of something like this than right now, and I really do hope you guys go out and support it when it does come out. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.